Hi, and welcome to another edition of Financial Education Fridays. My name is Jim, and I'm one of the instructors. Normally, I would have my continuing series on how an economy grows, but last week I put it off because of something a little bit more relevant, and I'm doing the same thing this week. I read an article from MarketWatch on student loans. So I thought it was pretty relevant. So, like I said, since this is a loose forum, and I thought this was an important topic to discuss and giving you my opinion. I decided to stick this in instead of continuing on with the how an economy grows, which I hope to get back to. And when I do, you'll know. Right, so I saw on MarketWatch, and the link is in the post, and here it is again. The article was entitled "Obama to Promise Student Loan Relief and More Must Reads." And as part of the article, it had said, House says Obama will expand the criteria for an alternative repayment program which caps monthly payments for certain federal student loans at 10% of a borrower's discretionary income. Now, I've repeatedly said, you have to pay attention, you have to be able to think for yourself and what things like this could mean. All right. So, this sounds good. And that's the way news is. It's, how does this sound? Oh, this, why would they go and do this? Why would Obama, create this or want to create an alternative payment program? Okay. It isn't for their benefit. It's for the government's benefit to get your money. Okay. Um, you know, uh, so let me just start rambling here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to show how some of the pitfalls to this, or even student loans to begin with. So let me just babble on. I know I'm doing that already, but all right. As an analogy, I've seen people, go into, say, a Burger King or McDonald's, okay, and let's say, there's, two of the people, and the entire meal comes to say $17, okay, and I've seen this when they go to pay, they use a credit card. Okay. Now, if you think about it, here's the person, all right? They're getting the meal, right? Here's Burger King, let's say, okay? They're making the $17, right? But the way Burger King gets the $17 is because it comes from you, all right? Now, if you have the cash, your hard-earned, money, and that's a topic for another day as to exactly what money is. It's a store of value. It's a representation of your labor. It isn't that dollar in your pocket. But again, that's for another day. If you had the $17, you would just give Burger King the $17 and they'd give you the food. Okay. But if you don't have the $17, well, what do you do? Well, here's the bank. Okay. And the bank gave you that piece of plastic called a credit card, right? So the bank says, okay, you know what? We'll give you the $17 so that you can give to Burger King, and Burger King can give you the food. But in return, you're going to pay interest on that uh, on that loan of the $17. Okay. So what does that mean? Well, depending upon the interest rates, and it's not unheard of because people, that if you just took that $17 and you paid interest on it, they're going to say, oh, you make a minimum payment, okay? And that minimum payment first includes interest, okay? Now, you're, very little of it is on the principal. And remember, the principal is what was borrowed first, okay? And as long as that's outstanding, you know, they're able to collect interest. So depending upon the payment structure, that $17 um, uh, Burger King actually can end up costing upwards of like $54. And you don't realize it because why? Oh, I'm making this here $10 monthly payment, right? Um, and you don't realize that out of that $10, 9.98 $9.98 goes towards interest, and the 2 cents goes towards the principal, right? So your $17 Burger King, ends up costing you $54, but you don't know that because why? That's debt, that's credit. All right, so what does this have to do with the student loan? All right, okay, let me get a new slide here. All right, when you have, here's you again, okay, and here's the government, and here is the school, okay. Now, let's say, the education is going to cost $60,000. Well, if you'd have the cash, you'd give it to the school. The school would provide the service of teaching you, taking all of the courses, and you wouldn't, your education would cost the $60,000. But a lot of people don't have $60,000, so what do? They say, okay, the school has an arrangement with the government for something called a student loan. Okay. Now, and the government's happy to do this because the student says, I need a student loan. So what they're doing is they're going to the government and they're borrowing the money. Now the government gives the school the 60,000. So the school makes their money, okay? That's a win for them. You get your education. That's a win for you. So how does the government win? Well, the government wins because you're paying interest on that student loan, okay, based upon whatever the terms are. I mean, at one point in time, I was paying 18% interest. I refinanced at 8%. Little did I know that right now interest rates are 4, but that's, this is all the gamble that you're taking, okay? But let's just say, and I'm just going to keep numbers simple, that, you're paying, 5%, okay? Well, when you make that payment, and let's say you have options, and this is all your own doing. You're the one who decides this. You can take, you make your choice. You can take a 10-year, a 20-year, or a 30-year, student loan. Okay, and of course, the longer the period of time, the less the monthly payment, right? But here's the thing. The more time you take, the more interest you're going to pay because time is money, okay? Now, when the government sets up the loan, let's say it's a $300 monthly payment, right? Out of that $300, at first, only maybe $10 of it goes to principal, right? The remaining 290 goes to interest. Okay, so what you're paying is you're paying off the interest first, and that principal is constantly being, um, uh, you know, you're constantly accruing additional interest over the course of that time. So that $60,000 loan, over a 30-year period, and again, I'm making up, this is theory, I'm just guessing at numbers, making things up, but a $60,000 loan could actually end up costing you $180,000. Okay, for that education, right? Now, what does this have, uh, what does this have to do with um, this here article that had said Obama will expand the criteria for alternative repayment program, which caps monthly payments. Now, notice the key word here is caps monthly payments at 10% of a borrower's discretionary income. Okay, well, if you think about that, if you owe $60,000 and your monthly income is, let's say, I don't know, 5,000 a month. Okay, and it's basically saying that it's going to cap your payment at 10%. All right. So that means the most you're going to be able to pay is $500. Okay, and this is kind of good. Now remember, I had said that the loan was $300, right? So you have the ability to pay back that $300, but what happens if you can't pay the 5,000? Let's say, I mean, you don't make 5,000. Let's say you only make 2,000. Okay. Well, 10% of 2,000 is $200. Sounds like a good deal because normally you would pay 300, but now you're only the maximum that you can pay because the 10% is only $200. So, oh, I don't have to pay the 300. Oh, since I can, because I don't want to take as much out of my living expenses, so I'm able to go to school and I'm also able to afford, to be able to live. The person at $2,000, if they had to pay the $300 a month, they wouldn't be able to go to school, okay? Because it would be too much of their income, and you know that the student theoretically would default, and because they can't even make their living expenses such as being able to feed themselves and rent and that type of thing. So a lower income at 10% means less of a payment, which means now these students, because of the 10%, can go to school and take the student loan. But here's the catch: that $200, right? Again, out of that, maybe only $1 would go to principal, all right? And the remaining 199 would go against, would go against the interest, all right? So what that means is that, the principal is going to be there a lot longer, okay? And the longer it's there, the more interest you're going to end up paying, okay? So what happens is that $60,000 I had said was maybe 180. Well, under a new plan like this, maybe you're going to end up paying 240,000 just because you can't meet the $300 based upon what you earn. I mean, again, this is theory. It's just an idea, you know, and what the numbers work out. The point I'm trying to get at here is that you actually have to look at what's going on and think about it. If I'm capping at 10%, that means that principal sits there much, much longer, okay? And if that as long as that principal is sitting there, you are paying interest. And who gets that interest? Okay? The government gets that interest. Okay? And they also get the principal back. So, a 20-year-old, 20 years old, a student loan for 30 years means they're paying until they're 50. Well, under a policy like this, maybe they're going to be paying until they're 60. Okay? That's an awful long time. And the amount of money that you paid that you'll end up paying the government back, as an example, this 240,000, or even if it was 180,000, you think about it, that's the price of a house. All right? So you're most likely not going to live in a house. You're going to rent. You're not going to own the house because why? You're paying off this student loan. Well, you can say to yourself, well, I'll make more money, okay? Getting this college education. All right, well, let's look at that just real quick. And I know I'm at like 13 minutes and this is getting a little long, but let me point something else out to you. Here's you, okay? And here's the school. And here's the government. Okay, now remember, the government has a vested interest in you getting a student loan, okay? Because they make the interest, okay? The school, they're in, they're getting the money from the government. They're in, they have a vested interest in you taking a student loan because they make their money on that particular course. Yeah, you get the education, all right? However, I want to point out that, what kind of education are you getting, okay? How many students are there that have a college degree and are unemployed? You're still liable for that student loan. They'll tag your wages. They'll put a lien against your wages. Even if you declare bankruptcy, the student loan never goes away. So the government is going to get their money, down the road, okay, whether you have a job or not. So, when you're looking at this, okay, let's say let me pick out something that's kind of outrageous, but let's say Russian literature. Okay. Now, anyone who's taken Russian literature, I'm sorry I'm using this as an example, but there's not a huge job market for Russian literature. Right? The school, they're interested in selling a product. Their product is selling the education. Okay. So it doesn't matter to them what it is that you take. What matters is that they deliver the product, the education, and they get paid for it. That's what the school is in business to make money, and that's how they make their money. So if you're walking into the school and you say, I want to take Russian literature, the school is more than happy to provide that education to you because why? You already know and have an interest in it, and that's what you want, and they're not going to question it whatsoever. Okay? Because why? You're going to take the student loan, the government's going to give them the money, and they get paid. Does does it ever occur to you how the school system, the educational system, when they have a need in a field, they'll promote that field? Like a little while ago, it was vet tech. Okay, we have a vet tech program here. Okay, it's a huge industry right now, and everybody's promoting vet tech. I remember when becoming a pharmacist. All right, pharmacists, there was always a little corner store that had a pharmacist in it that you went in order to get your medications and stuff like that. But then when places like Walmart, CVS, Rite Aid, Walgreens, um, and places like this decided to open up pharmacies, there was a huge demand for pharmacists. And so what did the schools do? The schools all promoted pharmacy, telling you, oh yeah, 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 this is a growing field, and this is wonderful, and you'll get a job. And sure, that worked, and those students who jumped into pharmacy at first, over the 4 years that it took to get the degree, during that 4 years, those students were, in the cat seat, you know, um, because they were filling that position. But after 4 years, when all of these pharmacists were trained, all of these positions are filled, and now that field is saturated. So what does the school do? They're looking for the next new thing, vet tech or whatever. Medical is going to be another big one here, okay, in that field. And the school will promote those. But what about that student who comes in and says, Russian literature, okay? Well, the school does not promote, okay? In other words, they don't say, why would you take Russian literature? There's no demand for it. You're not going to find a job. You're not going to get paid. And I see the same thing with a field like psychology, PSY psychology, okay? Um, you know, People who go to school for psychology, they, most often they become social workers. All right. Now, I'm being very general here. All right, but it's just to point something out that social workers, they're lucky if they make 20 grand a year. Okay. They want to help people, and if that's their satisfaction in life, that's fine. But the point being is that you're looking to you know get into a field and earn a living. Well, if you're a social worker making 20,000 a year, and you have to pay back a student loan, right, of $300, that's a very, very tight. You have to work out the numbers. You're going to see that you're going to struggle, and basically what you're doing is you're working to pay the government. The money you make goes to the government. So you're working for the government, and that's how the government wins. They're making that money through interest on your student loan. So you're not getting ahead. You need to be able to find a field where you're going to make more on for a return on your investment. Yet when the school says, pharmacy, that was at that time, you know, that was a good deal because the pharmacists were getting paid much, much more, and they were able to pay back their student loans in a reasonable period of time. But today, becoming a pharmacist, they're in just as much debt as anybody else, even though it seems like it's a respectable field. Okay. Um, so just realize that the schools don't have your best interest at heart. They're not going to tell the Russian literature student, oh, why are you doing that? Because you're not going to find a job, or the job that you're going to get is very, pays very little, and all you're going to be able to do is just pay back the government. And in the meantime, you're working 20, 30 years paying back the government, and you're not able to have a house, you're not able to fulfill your dreams, go on vacation and do these things because you can't make the extra cash. So what you really need to do is sit down and look and say, okay, what field what fields are, you know, good right at the moment. And the thing that jumps into my mind is energy. Anything in the natural gas field or solar or those windmills, electrical and windmills and stuff like that. These kinds of trades. Those are the places you need to be, want to go. Now, I say this and I don't want to, this to scare everybody. However, when you look at Penn Foster, okay, and here's the nice thing about Penn Foster, right? No student loan, okay? When you don't have a student loan, no student loan, all right? You're paying for your education as you go, okay? And this is not um, uh, an advertisement for Penn Foster, but that is a major benefit to you, so that at the end of the line, you have no debt, okay? So that whatever field you went in, now when you have your job and you're making that, let's say $3,000 a month, I'm just picking numbers here, that's all your money. 10% is not going to the government, okay? Or, however much that is, $300 isn't going to the government, okay? You know, that's money in your pocket, okay? Um, Me personally, so you know where I'm coming from, I have student loans. And every month I have to pay that student loan. I'm not happy about it. And if I knew this before I went to school, okay, if I had somebody to tell me this thing, I would have done things differently. So, I hope that helps. Leave any comments, questions, or whatever have you. I'll be free to entertain them. It is a different look, and I realize that it's a little strange, but I hope this helps, some of you out there. And like I said, post a comment. All right, thanks, and we'll see you next week.